Okay, that's creepy. It's creepy! Well, because, I mean, it's the government. They never do anything.
Ew. That gonna smell worse than the baby. Okay, no, maybe I should. Hey guys! I suck at this. Hey guys, welcome back. We are here today together, Midwest couple. So we are doing another video. And this video you came across, or did somebody...
Laura sent this to me through Discord.
It sounds really creepy, okay? So today's video we're going to do why were Victorian children killed by their toys. This is something I have not heard of. This seems very strange to me, but I'm not totally surprised because I know some old toys are very dangerous and that's why they're discontinued or not around anymore. So this is going to be, I guess, a list of some...
I don't think it's a list. It's just why were they killed.
Why they were killed by their toys?
Yep.
Because their toys were possessed, maybe. I can't do it. Okay. So we're going to watch this video. And I think it's mainly British toys, I'm assuming.
Victorian.
Victorian. Anyways.
I bet it's called the Victorian era because Queen Victoria...
Ah! Delightful. Anyway, we're going to watch this video and get right into it.
But before we get into the video, guys, please like, share, subscribe, turn that notification bell on, do all that good, great YouTube stuff.
It really helps us.
It really helps out the channel and lets us know that you guys like it and want us to continue. With that being said, guys, let's get right in this video and check it out.
I said that already.
Boom, bada bing.
Some of the first abnormalities that might be found would be developmental ones. So the child may not develop as normal and may have behavioural problems. Things that might have been put down to temper tantrums, or nowadays something like an attention deficit disorder, may actually have been due to lead poisoning.
Okay.
Oh. Is that what lead poisoning does? Apparently.
Okay, that's creepy. It's creepy!
The new consumer culture even extended as far as providing entertainment for children. Surely that wouldn't be a problem, would it?
Alarmingly, despite all the progress, 154,000 infants under the age of 1 died annually between 1880 and 1890.
Damn.
And so a surviving child was an important one, and their interests were indulged.
Childhood was expanded more than ever before.
I think part of that is life expectancy was kind of rough.
Life expectancy for Victorians was, in 1850, it was 40 for men and 42 for women. Like always, women always live longer. By 1900, it was 45 and 50 for women. 45 for men, 50 for women.
Life expectancy in general is very low.
Yeah.
Like for kids. I don't know.
Childhood was expanded more than ever before. I mean, girls were at home for a very long time, virtuous young ladies. Lord Shaftesbury saying children shouldn't work excessively in factories. The idea of childhood became sacrosanct.
Oh yeah, children
In the
shouldn't work in
Victorian
factories,
world,
period.
this meant a new consumer market to target.
Manufacturers absolutely poured goods for the child into the shops, and people snapped them up. This was a time when Christmas was essentially invented as a child's festival, at a time when children received presents and children were spoiled.
But it was this indulgence that was now endangering children. And toys were the problem.
Anything that was coloured or pigmented would have had high levels of a toxic metal in it. And even if it was white, it wasn't safe, so there was large levels of lead in white painted objects.
Lead is a very poisonous substance, and there's no amount of lead that is safe for your body. Even the tiniest amount of it can be detrimental. And obviously children being much smaller, and also because they're developing and lead damages the nervous system, are much more susceptible to lead poisoning. And unfortunately it's typically children who were poisoned by lead.
And they eat everything.
Partly because it was used for things like lead soldiers and for painting children's toys, but also because of the children's habit of licking and putting things in their mouth. Unlike a lot of poisons which have an unpleasant taste, lead is not unpleasant, and so just by licking it wouldn't put a child off.
So why on earth were the Victorians putting lead in paint? It's been known to be poisonous since Roman times.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Quite simply, it was and remains the best preserver of wood. They had no idea that its poison could be transferred from a toy into a child's body.
That's sad.
Some of the first abnormalities that might be found would be developmental ones, so the child may not develop as normal and may have behavioural problems, things that might have been put down to temper tantrums, or nowadays something like an attention deficit disorder may actually have been due to lead poisoning. Almost impossible to identify if you can't test the levels of lead, because it's just the way in which that particular child is developing, and who knows what their potential would have been had they not been exposed to lead.
So it may not necessarily kill you.
Lead
right away.
wasn't just brought into the house.
No, that does not kill you right away, but yeah,
Okay. It just affects your.
I'm pretty sure what they were
growth,
saying.
I think.
well, it does kill you eventually.
Yeah, like a shorter lifespan.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just really, really bad for the body. But they were saying children,
They're more susceptible.
they're more
they said.
susceptible to it
Yeah.
or whatever.
Lead wasn't just brought into the house on objects.
Oh,
It was in
water.
the very fabric of the home, on painted surfaces.
We have a look at this door frame. I suspect there probably is lead in this. Lead was ubiquitous in the Victorian house for providing white gloss paints that you might find on every wooden painted item would have been used with lead. We can have a look at this piece of woodwork and see what's present in this as well. We can see immediately there's quite a lot of lead. There's 3,000 ppm of lead in that. Because it's been stripped, it's probably just against traces of old lead paint before the old paintwork was taken off.
In the late 19th century, lead poisoning was rife, but it was difficult to detect.
Lead poisoning could cause anemia. It's often described that people had a grey pallor, a sort of very unhealthy look. But one way which is identified by physician Dr. Henry Burton in 1840 was something called Burton's lines, which was a bluey-grey line at the base of the gums, just at the top of the teeth, that gave a very characteristic mark that was a sign of lead poisoning.
Ew.
Although by the time you identified that line, it was probably too late to
Yeah, I was gonna say.
undo some of the effects that the lead is likely to have had by then.
Girl needs a detox.
Despite the gruesome evidence, the government did nothing.
It was not until the
I'm sorry, but
Why is that funny?
well, because I mean it's the government; they never do anything.
Oh.
Yeah, I gotta take that back though. Actually, there are a lot of, at least nowadays, they have done a ton of recalls, and again, working in construction, there's way more safety measures and warning
Yeah, the
signs.
protocols you
and,
have to jump
like
through. And...
the skull and crossbones for like this is poison, do not use in this. Or well, I know like asbestos was a really big thing.
Oh yeah.
And they pretty much tried to get rid of it all.
Yeah.
Like if you have any old home that has any,
You have to get like special permits and special people to
Yeah.
dispose of it just very special way because it's such a dangerous chemical. And
one encounter I had with it is some guy had a roof that was made of asbestos shingles. And the roof lasted like 100 years. It was a great roof, but it started leaking. And he had a whole time with the insurance company to get it replaced. And when he finally did, like the crew had to like wear all the tons.
hazmats.
It almost looked like the hazmat
wow.
suits. And they had to like put as much plastic around the houses
So
that they
the
could.
particles wouldn't go in the air.
Yeah.
It's just like a crazy process you have to go through.
It was not until the 1920s that white lead was banned in indoor paint products in Sweden, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Poland, Spain, Finland and Norway, but not Britain. Amazingly, it wasn't until the 1970s, more than 100 years after the problem had been identified, that the British government finally passed legislation to control the lead content of household paint.
Wow.
That sounds about right.
Even
100 years to
today,
do something.
lead paint in old houses still poses a risk. But there was an even bigger threat. I'm on the hunt for our last and possibly our greatest hidden killer, and again, one invisible to the Victorian eye. Infant mortality rates in Victorian Britain were terrifyingly high. As many as 15% of all babies died in their first year of life.
Wow.
And often the cause was an unexpected
That's
one.
awful.
Mummy's little helper.
Cocaine?
Baby science, the idea that babies could be studied and developed in the most healthy way, was the new order of the day.
So I don't know if it was cocaine, but there is a drug that was called Mommy's Little Helper. I think it was Valium.
I
At
thought it
least-
was laudanum.
I don't remember, but there was some kind of like a hard drug that was called Mommy's
It was
Little
like
Helper.
a cough syrup type thing, I think. Also the baby in the
Most healthy
next picture,
way
creepy.
was the new order of the day.
like a Benjamin
Looks like a
Button
man.
baby.
In the 18th century, the idea
Weird.
was that God took the children he wanted. There was very high infant mortality, and it was up to God, so you just let it go. In the 19th century, it was much more about science, and women could be seen as responsible, and they were judged by how many of their children stayed alive, just like the Queen, who had 9 children, kept them all alive, who lived long and happy lives.
The relationship between traditional ideas and the new scientific approach became increasingly fraught around how to feed babies. To comprehend how this domestic danger had such an impact requires understanding the Victorian attitudes to baby rearing.
Breastfeeding had long been rather unpopular in the higher aristocracy. The Queen didn't breastfeed. It was something that aristocratic women simply didn't do. They gave the job to wet nurses, big,
Interesting.
fat, jolly wet nurse, rather than the Victorian woman who was supposed to be much more delicate, much more refined, and much more restrained.
So
This
they were above it.
Yeah.
That's so dumb.
This attitude filtered into the new swelling middle classes. One figure loomed large over the household guides to bringing up baby, Mrs. Beeton, and it was her they turned to for advice.
Mrs. Beeton gives 2 chapters in her book which was enormously influential to baby and child care. And it tells you all the useful tips about breastfeeding, like drink lots of beer. Although it does say stay off the gin. But
I think I actually know why beer is good.
Why?
Because most beer has like barley in it, and barley is a milk producer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like whole wheats and barley help.
I did not know that.
Yeah, maybe malt in general, I think.
I don't breastfeed, so I don't have to know this.
Thank goodness for that.
after that, it then moves on to what to do if, for whatever reason, you cannot breastfeed your child.
Any new idea needs explaining in detail. Feeding babies by bottle was a new idea.
The problem with this advice, it takes up much more space in the book. So it seems as though it is actually recommending bottle feeding, or as it was known in the 19th century, rearing by hand.
But many saw this as Mrs. Beeton promoting bottle feeding. Her perceived support and the marketing of babies' bottles put huge pressure on women to abandon breastfeeding.
Those look very interesting with the...
And there are these bottles that have these kind of fantastic empire names. The Empire bottle, they're really suggesting that for a woman to choose the bottle, I mean, brilliant marketing ploy, to choose the bottle made her a much better citizen of empire. She was essentially doing the right thing for her children.
But was she?
Could this be a hidden killer?
So far, I don't see how class.
Dr.
but we'll
Matthew
see.
Avison is a microbiologist. He's going to use his scientific expertise to cast an eye on this Victorian innovation.
So Matthew, I have brought you this. This is a Victorian baby's bottle. What's wrong with this?
I think the obvious thing just looking at it is because of this bend on the side of it, it's very difficult to actually clean away any residue that might be forming in here. And also the stopper being made of rubber and the tubing, they're all porous materials. So they would accumulate residue of milk, and any bacteria that might be in that would permeate into the porous material, and you'd end up very quickly with bacteria growing in that.
Boil it.
There's the bottle, and then there is either a rubber or a animal skin nipple, which, says Mrs. Beeton's book, you tie on, and then you don't have to take off for the 2 or 3 weeks it lasts. So apart from outside, it never gets washed.
Oh.
Sounds disgusting.
Yeah, that could definitely...
Cause
that
some
would definitely
issues.
cause a lot of issues. Like, even now, gosh, I mean, I know people when they pump or breastfeed or whatever, like, I know people just constantly just rotating through bottles. Like after every use, you wash, rinse, sterilize, and all that, so...
I feel like it's more trouble to bottle feed than...
Because at first I was like, what, like glass? Like, no. I mean, it definitely has bacteria if you don't clean and sterilize, but I was like, you can boil it, whatever.
Yeah.
But once they pointed out, like, the rubber and not cleaning it for like 2 or 3 weeks. A lot.
Smell worse than the baby.
Well, it gets trapped, you probably don't smell it.
Sounds disgusting. But what are the dangers of using porous materials with milk? Matthew's designed an experiment. He contaminates a piece of porous cork and a piece of non-porous plastic with a bacteria that would have been common in Victorian times. He gives them each a quick wash and drops them into a liquid that mimics the contents of the Victorian bottle.
The shaking of the incubator introduces oxygen into the samples, which makes them grow faster, and it also heats them up to body temperature, 37 degrees. Just gives us a quicker result.
Whilst we wait for the result, what was going into the Victorian baby bottle? Breast pumps existed, so mother's milk, and a nutritious formula, according to the food manufacturers.
The things that were recommended, I mean, what Mrs. Beaton's doctor calls farinaceous foods, which are foods, they're formula that's sold in shops, but is basically flour. You know, the children didn't thrive for very obvious reasons to us.
Yeah.
Did they have an idea about bacteria? In the 1890s, say, when this feeding bottle was invented?
Well, so around about that time, they've probably, scientists are going to have made discoveries about the link between the bacterial colonisation of substances and disease. So there are many examples of that. For example, the cholera epidemics in London were stamped out by separation of sewerage and water. And that had happened by that time, but it's just whether that information had permeated down to the domestic level.
So what has our experiment proved?
Okay.
So these are the results of the samples that I inoculated last night. You can clearly see that the one with the cork is much, much denser. You get a much denser growth than on the plastic. This just shows that there were many more bacteria on the cork than on the plastic.
Yeah.
And the bacteria have come from the pores within the cork. It illustrates the idea that when you have a porous material, it soaks up bacteria. Even in a few hours, you're going to get enough bacteria
That's a huge
to cause an
difference.
infection.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what does this mean for our baby's bottle?
Yeah, I think they didn't really understand that porous materials would retain the bacteria even if they were washed over the surface like
Right.
this cork had been. And so therefore, if new media is put on, new milk, new food, it's going to take up the bacteria again and cause this effect.
Just reinfecting everything. Ugh.
Victorian Britain was alive with killer diseases that sound tropical now, but were common then.
Things like dysentery and typhoid, these are all very, very serious intestinal diseases passed on through dirty water, which was then drunk. The cycle completes itself and you end up with serious diarrhea infections. And for a small baby, dehydration very, very quickly would lead to death within 48 hours.
Gosh, that quickly.
Absolutely.
The lack of knowledge of transmission of germs in water meant that bottle-fed children were more at risk.
Wow.
In addition to that, there are lots of bacteria that live in the mouth and in the upper respiratory tract, in the back of the throat. These bacteria are fine if they're there, but if they were to get inhaled into the lungs, they could cause pneumonia. And of course, when you're sucking on something like this, there's a potential for any bacteria like that to effectively be inhaled in small droplets. If they get into the lungs, they can cause a lower respiratory tract infection, what we call pneumonia. And of course, infant pneumonia was the biggest cause of death in babies. And those bacteria from the upper respiratory tract getting down there, causing that pneumonia, could potentially be lethal, again, very quickly, and with no cure.
So that's not just one bacteria, it's not just one danger, there's loads of them, dozens of them.
We're all covered in billions, trillions of bacteria. What we're providing here is a place for those bacteria to get a niche, to grow, multiply into excessive quantities, and then an access route straight into a very vulnerable individual. And that's why these things undoubtedly would have killed many children.
Wow.
So the dirtiest, most bacteria-ridden, deadliest object of all went straight into the mouths of babes.
Doctors came to understand the dangers of bacteria and its growth. A step forward was made in 1894 with Allen and Hanbury's double-ended feeder bottle. The design had a teat at one end and a valve at the other, This enabled the flow of milk to be constant, but more importantly, it was easy to clean and therefore safer.
Yeah. So you don't have a nipple thing.
Despite this, the
Or,
old,
I guess they had
dangerous
a nipple on
bottle
one side.
sold well into the 20th century.
Jeez. See, I always thought, you know, if it's glass, it's better because you can clean it better than certain plastics, and certain plastics have toxins in it, but if you don't clean it properly, it can just be as bad.
Well, I don't think they mentioned the glass, the shape of it,
Yeah.
made it a little, because it made it hard to clean.
Yeah.
But glass itself, I still think is superior when it comes to plastic. I
Yeah.
could be wrong on that. I'm not a scientist.
I think it's partially because, you know, glass, you don't have germs that stick to it.
But
as
he
bad.
did show plastic is not. If it is,
It was better than cork.
If it is even somewhat porous, I don't know if it really is. I think over time maybe it can kind of soak up some stuff. I'm not for sure on that.
For me, I feel this urge to suddenly go clean all of my kids' toys and like extra clean all their bottles and stuff. It's just like
That is one thing. Yeah, we probably don't. I mean, granted, most toys nowadays are made out of plastic, but like they put in their mouths and stuff, and I'm sure like we don't like wipe them down near enough.
It's eye-opening for sure. That was a very interesting video.
Yeah.
That was.
They were talking about the toys, and I kind of knew about the lead paint and stuff. So I was but then they started going to the bottles. I knew nothing about that at all. One thing that is interesting, I think, with the lead paint though, is they have such old homes there that are still standing.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious if you guys just have repainted over everything to the point where it's not as bad, or what have you guys done to like address the lead paint in old homes?
Just be very careful, like no children allowed in that home. Because I think just it on the wall isn't as bad. It's if it's flaking and you start to taste it, inhale it.
Well, no, I think it's the
in your
touching and I guess
like a smooth wall.
As an adult, I don't think. I think you have to ingest it. I don't know what the properties are if you breathe it, if it's in like the area, if that affects you at all.
Shouldn't be licking a wall in general. So what do you guys do for that? Because most of the homes over here, they come with a warning if they're past a certain age. But I don't know if you can actually dispose of the walls, like stripping the paint, or if you painting over is enough.
Well, you can tear the walls.
Yeah, but that's a big remodel project.
It's just any full-on remodel.
Interesting.
Anyway, guys, I know this is a long video. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know what you guys thought and what you guys know about this time period.
Was any of this information new to you? Because this is all new to me.
I think that's all we have for the video, though, guys. We will catch you guys in the next one. Please be safe, take care, look after one another, and watch those toys.
Wash them. Not watch them. Wash them.